everybody. This is Sujata, and today we are meeting a very special guest, one of my favorite. If you are on social media, you would know. Yes, you're talking about Saifali Vaidya. She needs no introduction, and that's why I am not getting into her introduction. You can go to her Twitter profile, follow her Facebook, Instagram, and I'm sure each one of us will find a one thing that worthy of following, reading, and listening to what she says. But yes, you need a clean mind. You don't need a mind full of bias to read what she says and to listen to what she comes and talks about on different topics. It can be about temples, it can be about textiles, it can be about politics, it can be about travel, and of course her two very lovely dog and the things that she shows is her little garden and her fabulous saris and all about it, and how to live probably a very happy life and doing all that and mastering it like and slaying it like none other. We have Shefali Vaidya with us. So thank you, Shefali ji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujata. And thank you for inviting me. I mentioned this before, so I'll say that to your audience also. This interview is very strange for me, feeling that I'm talking my 20-year-old self. You look so similar. For years, I had this haircut, and it's almost like, I'm having a conversation with myself. So this should be very interesting.
Wow. I just told her before this that she made my days by saying that. So hello. So we'll start with Shefali ji. We'll start with one of the things that gets talked about often, but probably we just talk about it. We don't talk about what is the solution, why is it happening. So I'll start with calling out the elephant in the room, the Hindu phobia. In a Hindu majority country like ours, where 80% of the population is Hindu, why does a term like Hindu phobia even exist? What I'm trying to say is that why a country like ours, where Hindus are in majority, where we understand the culture, tradition, etc., everything about Hindu, we have been born as Hindu, yet we have to come across every day some cases of people either defending their surname, their caste, what they do, why they're vegetarian, why do they perform that particular ritual or go to temples, to an extent of even sometimes, explaining people that what my name means and why do you think that this happens? I mean, we don't hear of Islamophobia in Islamic countries or Christian phobia in Christian countries. There the Barack Obama can go to the church every Sunday, and that will be put on the cover of a photo as someone who's like very inclusive. But where here our prime minister goes to any temple, he is labeled as someone forwarding the agenda of Hindutva or Hindu Rashtra. Why is that?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked this question. It's a very valid question. But to start with, I will say that Hindu phobia is not the correct term, because phobia is an irrational fear of something that could harm you potentially. And Hindu phobia by itself is a completely wrong term, because Hindus have never really harmed anybody in history. If at all, it is the other religions, it is the other invaders which have harmed the Hindus. So Hindu phobia does not exist, as in phobia does not exist. What exists is a very vicious, bitter form of Hindu hatred, where everything that is Hindu, everything that is close to tradition, everything that is close to dharma is consistently and systematically demonized, and everything that is against dharma is consistently eulogized by a section of the Indian society. You said, why in an Islamic majority country there is no Islamophobia? Why in a Christian majority country there is no Christian phobia or Christophobia? Basically, India is not a Hindu country, unfortunately. It is a Hindu majority country, yes, but at the rate at which demographic change is happening in several states in India, I don't know how long we can continue to call it. It's a very bitter truth, but we have to face it. But having said that, we are a Hindu majority country today, yes. But how many of us, especially the local population, large majority of people are still practicing devout Hindus. If you go to any temple in India, you'll see that. But the people who have a voice in the media or in academia or in films or in nowadays in social media, they are the people, they are largely They fit a profile actually. They are urban, they are English educated, they are completely deracinated from their roots. They don't know anything about their religion. They hardly even know any Indian languages. They don't know the scriptures. They have never even read basic scriptures like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So they base their opinion about the Ramayana from some PhD thesis from some foreign university, but they don't read, or they have not bothered to go and buy themselves a Gita Press original Ramayana and read it along with the translation. So nobody has really bothered to study the sculptures, to read the scriptures, but they opine. And unfortunately, in today's day, because of the profusion of social media and because it's very quick to get your opinion across to the world, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because of that, you make a provocative statement and you become an instant celebrity. So there's a trend here. You are an out of work comedian who, nobody really likes and nobody would come to pay to listen to you. So nobody knows. You don't have a source of income. So what do? You want to be famous. You want to be famous or notorious. Let me put it that way. तो आपको public eye में आना है, quickly आना है. तो क्या करोगे आप? You will make a stupid comedy show dissing Hindu characters, Hindu gods, or making some crass jokes about cremation or whatever, and you will put it on Instagram and you'll put it on social media. And then obviously, predictably, you have made a provocative statement in that comedy show deliberately because you want people to get provoked. You want people to retaliate at you. So obviously, people's feelings will be hurt and they will cause a furor against it. And then you will play the victim. And then you will say, look at these Hindu fundamentalists. They don't even let me speak up. They don't even let me exercise my freedom of speech. This is very bad. This is intolerance. This is fascism. This is communalism, blah, 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 blah. They'll put those very convenient labels. And they will become instantly famous because the avenues to make them famous, like publishing, like media, like films, like academia, are all in the hands of the so-called left thinkers. I wouldn't call them liberals because they're the most illiberal, most intolerant people around. But they have the power to give you a scholarship. They have the power to give you a book deal. They have the power to make you look like a victim. So this careful construct of victimhood is so entrenched and so powerful that just yesterday I read an article, I think it was covered in the Hindu on the front page. It is about the so-called fake sob story of some Bindu Sampath, who is the mother of that girl, who Nimisha or somebody, who converted to Islam and escaped from India, Afghanistan to join the Islamic State, married an Islamic terrorist, saw a lot of killings. She has no remorse. I just shared her interview today, which somebody had forwarded to me. In that, this is the interview of an NIA interrogation with her. In that, she has shown no remorse. She's not sorry at all. She's still looking for Khilafat. She's still looking for Sharia. She's still looking for a so-called Islamic State where anybody who is a non-Muslim does not have any rights. And she is smiling about it. And she is saying, oh, I will go back to India if India doesn't oppress me or put me in jail. She's broken every rule or every law in India. And she's in Afghanistan. Nobody really wants her back. Nobody should want her back. If Indian people value their own life and safety, they should not want her back. She is a terrorist. She is chosen to be a terrorist. She knew very well what she was doing. But yet, we have sections of Indian media which will feature the fake sob story of a mother saying that my poor daughter, I'm pining for her, please let her come back, I appeal to the Indian government. And this is how they humanize terrorists, and in the same way, they dehumanize Hindu victims. So Islamic terrorists like that Fatima Isa, they always tell you about their human interest stories. Oh, how sweet she was as a baby girl, how she used to like fluffy bunnies or something like that, some ridiculous story like that they do every time an Islamic terrorist in Kashmir gets killed by the Indian army. You will read stories about, oh, he was so good at math when he was in class 1, he wanted to become a scientist. People called him Einstein, to eat ice cream by his mother or some such bullshit story. But they will never even feature stories about Hindus who are the victims of violence at the hand of Islamists. So there was a guy called Prashant Pujari. He's from Mudbidre, a small place in Karnataka. I went and met his mother also. He was he ran a very small stall of flowers in Mudbidri market, which his father and he looked after. He was the only son, he had one sister. And because he worked in the field of Goraksha, that was his only fault, that he cared for cows. Some fanatical Muslims from the same village, they came to his shop in broad daylight. He was sitting there with his father. They came with swords and knives and cutters, and they killed him in broad daylight in front of everybody, in front of his father. He had not killed anybody. He had not fought with anybody. He just wanted to protect cows because it was sacred to him. And that was such a brutal murder. And what happened? Were there debates in the mainstream national media? No. Were there articles written about him? No. Were there a victim narrative created about him? No. Nobody really even wanted to tell his story. And there were journalists like Rajdeep Sardesai. I'll take the names because what he said is there on record. He said it's okay, he was a VHP activist, so it's collateral damage, it's okay. Implying that it's okay that if he is a Vishwa Hindu Parishad activist, then he should be prepared for violence, he should be prepared for death. By the same logic, these guys will never say that a Burhan Wani, when he chose Islamic terrorism, and this guy was not even a terrorist, okay, he was just a nice boy wanting to look after cows. He was an animal activist, the same animal activist that these guys cry buckets for. But they call him a political terrorist and they justify his murder, Prashant Pujari's murder, only because he was a Hindu. But Burhan Wani, who has actually killed human beings, who has killed our soldiers, for that kind of a terrorist, when the Indian army is him, they write articles about, oh, how he's the poor headmaster's son, how good at math when he was in grade 3, how he won awards in sack and lemon race, or some such ridiculous stuff. Even about Ajmal Kasab, whom we have all seen with AK-47 mowing down innocent people in Mumbai in one of the worst terror attacks on India. We have seen articles in Indian newspapers which talk about how Kasab took to terrorism because when he was a 10-year-old child, he didn't have money to buy new clothes for Eid, and he was a very soft-spoken little boy. So this is the narrative that some sections of India, and they're unfortunately very, very powerful sections, even now, even though the political power has shifted since the past 7 years, even now, this section continues to be very powerful in the media, and they are the ones who decide whom to turn into a victim and whom to turn into a perpetrator. Now, Bengal elections, there have been horror stories coming incessantly about the Hindus in Bengal. Their women are being raped, their houses are being destroyed, their shops are being looted. Every day there are videos, every day there are stories. People have gone to Supreme Court seeking justice. Even if we assume that what the other side says, that most of these videos are fake, fine. If there are 100 videos, even if 50 of them are fake, let's assume that they are fake, but 50 of them are true. So do you mean to say that a 17-year-old girl from some village in West Bengal deserve justice by thugs from another religion just because she voted for the BJP, just because she's a Hindu? Why does she have to constantly justify herself? Why do people like you and I have to constantly justify ourselves, as you rightly said, saying we are Hindu, and why do we have to go on the defensive consistently? We have to, because not all of India is like this. But unfortunately, a very large section of opinionated Indians who have access to media which can amplify their voices are so-called left thinkers, which basically means, and I've said this in one of my write-ups, that the so-called left liberal intellectuals, Indian left liberal intellectuals, are neither Indian, they're neither liberal, nor are they intellectuals. They're very shallow people who have no understanding of the Sanatana Dharma. They don't care to have an understanding about Sanatana Dharma. They only have opinions and they pass off these opinions as facts. And we have seen this happening over and over again. So they haven't read the original Ramayana, but they'll be very quick to pass judgments on Sri Ram and Sita. They have not read the original Mahabharat, but they will be very quick to talk about Karna and Arjun battle based on somebody's tweet from some white professor in some university in the US. They will say Aurangzeb was a hero because some stupid historian in some university in the US has made up a completely fake narrative of whitewashing Aurangzeb. And this is the narrative that keeps getting peddled. And because of that, what has been happening is the past 70 years, the Hindu voice had hardly got any representation in the media. So when I studied communication, I studied a theory called the spiral of silence. The spiral of silence means that in a room, there is one dominant opinion. Okay, generally, if there are 10 people, there is one dominant opinion on any topic. And maybe there are 3 or 4 people who disagree from the opinion. But they are afraid that if they say that, then they will be made outcast by the majority. And the majority is always loud and very aggressive. So because of that, what happens? They don't speak up. So their voice, the minority's voice, becomes weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And finally, it spirals into silence, which is what has been happening to the Hindu voice, to the predominantly Hindu voice in the Indian media space all these years. Something say, there were no media available to them. They had opinions, but they couldn't express themselves because they would be ostracized and there would always be fear. And even now, when social media is so popular and you can express your opinion to the world, I meet so many Hindus who say that, we can't even say such things on our family WhatsApp groups because we have so many relatives who call themselves left liberals, and they promptly tell us that no politics on this group, or why are you being such a communal Sanghi or whatever. So this conspiracy to turn the Hindu voices into silent, acquiescing voices has been going on for the past 70 years. And one of the greatest person responsible for that was Nehru, basically, because his government, the first Indian government that took power after India became independent, could have chosen how India could have gone. Whether India is proud of her roots, whether India is proud of her heritage, or whether India turns into a banana republic full of deracinated individuals. And we all know what happened. Which is why even today,
I mean, aren't we expecting Nehru too much? Because look at his upbringing, look at his surrounding, look at his friends, look where he got the education from. He literally did not live in India at all. All his influence, all his ideologies were drawn from the West. It's just that he happened to be at the right time in the right family, so he got the representation. But
but the point is he made a lot, but the damage that he made it's something that we are still paying the price for, right? There were other people in the Congress at that point of time who were very clued in, who were very traditional, who were very dharmic, like Sardar Patel. Unfortunately, Patel died very soon after independence. There was K.M. Munshi, founder of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhuvan, who has come out with this R.C. Majumdar's 10 volumes of Indian history, which is very, very good. So blame him, understand him, or whatever, doesn't matter. The point is, I don't care for Nehru as a person, but I am appalled at the damage that he has wrought on India's educational scene, which we are still paying for it, even now. Because you go to any school's textbook in any state, you will find that across India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, everybody will know the genealogy of the Mughals. Everybody will know that Babar ka beta Jahangir ka beta, whoever, Babar ka beta Akbar, Akbar ka beta Jahangir, whatever, the whole genealogy. But ask somebody from even Maharashtra, ask them who is the greatest Chalukya emperor. They will not be able to know. Even people from Karnataka, where Chalukya kingdom was headquartered for a large number of years, even there, if you ask in a room full of 50 people who name the greatest Chalukya emperor, very few people will be able to tell you. That is the state of our history education. That's the state of our education generally.
No,
we are not taught yoga. The whole world is talking about yoga. Yeah.
Correct. No, I often wondered when I was studying, I would say, oh, they in 2, 3 chapters dedicated for the Mughals, what happened, who came, invaders. Basically, we were glorifying invaders. And one paragraph, what like 2 lines, maybe 3 lines for Chola,
Hmm.
all kind of great kingdoms, just 2 lines, and that's all. So you try and sum it up in probably half of the page. So how did you ever get to know? So growing up actually, because I studied in a convent school, that's another story. So and I figured, oh, did we have a history of only Mughals? Like it looked like that we were all Mughals came and gave us all that we have today as a heritage, but that the truth was not that. So of course you're right. Like they manipulated everything, not the entire intelligentsia, institution, books, what goes in, and probably made us a copy paste, population who just copies Western education and has the benchmarking with them only. We don't have a benchmark of our own. True.
True, very true. And the thing is, unfortunately, the West has been discovering Indian wisdom, Indian traditional wisdom in a very big way. But when it comes certified from the West, then suddenly our people will wake up and say, hey, yeah, maybe there is some sense. So Haldi Doodh, which has always been with us for millennia, we say, oh my God, it's so old fashioned. Why does my mom ask me to have Haldi Doodh every time I have cold? But when Starbucks sells it at 200 rupees and calls it turmeric latte, we'll all go stand in the line. And one day they offer it at half price for 100 rupees, and then you'll have find a line of 1 kilometer outside Starbucks wanting to drink that turmeric latte. And it is true for pretty much everything. So recently, somebody sent me a picture of it was doing the rounds on social media all the time. It is the Neem Ka Datun, which is being sold in Whole Foods in the US, nicely packaged for some $20 or something like that. This is saying that this is a eco-friendly toothbrush, which basically protects your teeth from decay. This is the wisdom that every Indian villager knows and has been using for many, many years. But our thing is, the minute we get educated, what we call educated, the minute we go to school, the first thing the school education does is to cut you away from your roots, cut you away from the traditional wisdom. So you junk everything that has been working, that your grandmother has been telling you, that your grandfather has been telling you, and then you think that, now I will use toothbrush. There's nothing wrong in using a toothbrush, but also understand that Neem Ka Datun has its value and it has been working. It has been proven. The same thing with yoga. How many schools in India have yoga as a part of their curriculum? Which, if you go to any other culture, if they had such a tradition, yoga has been universally accepted. There are no ways. Every scientific stream, every medicinal stream, every country in the world has accepted yoga abhyas and pranayam as a very good holistic health aid. And if you practice it, it's good for your body, it's good for your mind, it's good for keeping away the lifestyle diseases like blood pressure, like diabetes. It is good for your cardiovascular health. It is good for your mental health. That has been proved with reams and reams of scientific research, ratified by the best universities, best doctors in the world. And even then, we will still find people in India who say that religion, and the state gives them the right to that. Not only that, okay, you don't want to do it, you don't do it. But how can you say that the school should not be teaching Surya Namaskar? You don't want to join in it, that's your problem. But how can you say that other students, that to a majority of students who have always been brought up considering the sun as a
Element,
holy
yes.
god, or as a god worth of worshipping? How can you say that we don't want it, that's why no school should teach it? But that has been happening because we have pampered our so-called minorities. We have given them rights. We have taken the rights away from the minority and say that, oh, this goes against our religious feelings, so that's why we don't want to have it. What about the religious feelings of the majority Hindus? Why should I consider sun as sacred? So why should I be told by somebody saying that, oh, in our religion it is not allowed to worship sun? Okay, so then you don't worship in your home. But who are you to tell me that worshipping sun is wrong? Isn't that an attack on my religious freedom?
True.
Somebody should actually and recently somebody is in Karnataka has gone to court against this, and that court is, I don't know if you're aware of that case. So there was a Christian missionary who entered the house of a Hindu woman, and they started preaching their religion, and then that woman went to the police and said that her coming into my home and her preaching her religion is an assault on my religious sensibilities. She is undermining my religious beliefs, so she should be arrested. So the police registered a case. That Christian missionary went to court saying that the constitution has given me the right to preach my own religion, so therefore this FIR should be squashed. But the court gave a judgment saying that no, the FIR cannot be squashed because the Hindu woman is right. It is the Hindu woman is practicing her beliefs inside her own home, coming and telling her that what you're believing is wrong and your gods are false gods is an assault on her religious beliefs, and therefore she is right in complaining to the police. So this is the kind of legal activism that needs to be done a lot more. But unfortunately, for generations, Hindus have been more focused about just getting by in life, just working hard and earning a good living and ensuring that their family is in good shape, that there has been no mind space for legal activism, for understanding the laws and for using the laws to their advantage, which is what the other side has done very, very well. That is why you will find that even in case of Rohingyas, you'll find somebody taking up their wakalatnama and going to the court and saying that, okay, they may be illegal immigrants, but they have to be here. Things like that. There'll be petitions in the Supreme Court now for these Islamic terrorist women also, saying that, oh, they're women, they should be allowed to come to India, and all that, and you can try them. What happens? The whole system is skewed in their favor, right? Recently, Mumbai High Court gave bail to a ISIS terrorist, to somebody who was a male counterpart, who was basically left India and joined the Daesh and had fought and maybe even killed some of it. But the High Court gave him bail on humanitarian grounds. So tomorrow, if these women come to India also, then somebody will go to the court and they'll get bail. They knew everything. They knew exactly what they're doing. They had a healthy contempt for anybody who was not a Muslim, and they wanted to live in an Islamic state. That is why they left India, because India didn't have Sharia. India was a land of kafirs, and they went and joined Islamic State in Afghanistan. So why should they be allowed back in India?
That's correct.
Is it not a threat to the safety and law and order of this country?
That's correct.
What stops these women from strapping a suicide belt and blowing themselves off in front of a temple? How can we guarantee that this will not happen?
True. Another thing, Shafi, like you listed out, some facts which are, in anybody who's in true sense of his mind, in the right frame of the mind, will not accept and can clearly perhaps see the hypocrisy being peddled around, for generations now, and the fake narratives being placed. But then in that case, why do we have a left which is still so strong when they keep claiming that they are the champions of free speech, of free life and secularism, etc., etc., whereas their actions show otherwise, whereas what they practice is a cancel culture altogether. So in this case, why does our young generation today, who is today probably studying space, going to NASA and becoming scientists and things like that, and who are so digitally connected and aware of the things that is happening around the world, still why do they buy their point of view and not go and check the facts, what they're saying is whether correct or not correct, and be part of that entire machinery which peddles certain narratives to generate or to forward their political agenda? Why the young generation cannot see the difference?
See, this trend is not just limited to India. This cancer of, I would not mince words and call it, this cancer of exaggerated political correctness and excessive woke liberalism is something that is plaguing the world over. Almost all universities, all humanities courses across the world have been consistently and systematically peddling this kind of behavior and this kind of censorship. So basically, they are the ones who are the intolerant fascists who will not allow anybody who has a different shade of opinion to even express themselves. Recently, I saw a very harrowing interview of one lady called Miss Yang. She is a emigre from North Korea. Can you imagine? And it was an hour-long interview where she talks about her life in North Korea, and she talks about how people were so starving that they took to cannibalism, children were eating rats. All these stories that we read were actually true. Anyway, she managed to escape. She suffered unspeakable brutality, and she managed to escape. She came to North Korea. She became very popular. Then she got a scholarship, or she got admission to study humanities in the University of Columbia in the US. And in the last 5 minutes of the interview, she says, and imagine this is somebody who has escaped the brutal dictatorship of North Korea, saying that when I went to Columbia, that is the time I really learned to self censor myself, to not express what I really feel, because there was such a heavily tilted leftist intolerant atmosphere there. So she couldn't say what she really wanted to say in a university which talks about liberalism, which talks about liberal values, which talks about humanities. And then she also says that if tomorrow my son wants to study humanities in Columbia, I will tell him I will not pay for your education because it's not worth it. You're not learning anything useful. You're not learning a single life skill in the humanities department. You're not even learning liberalism and critical thinking that humanities is supposed to teach. So it's a complete waste of time and money, and it raises people into these brain dead, closed minded zombies who are intolerant to anyone else's point of view. That is a fact. And that is happening in Indian liberal universities also. You see JNU, you see Jadavpur, everywhere you see the same thing. You talk about being a proud Hindu, you talk about being a proud Sanatani, and they will come to you and they don't want to talk about even the bitter truths. They don't want to talk about the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. They don't want to talk about the exodus of Hindus from Kairana. They don't want to talk about the outrage and atrocities committed against the Hindus. Even right now in Bengal, they don't want to talk about the political murders of Hindus in Kerala. These are all documented facts, but they don't want to talk about it. Secondly, these people, when they talk about political violence, please note that when they talk about, or even media headlines, when they talk about political violence, where the victim is a Hindu and the victim is, and the perpetrator is a Muslim or a Christian, they will not even name the victim. They will
That's
only
right.
name the profession. Or but if it's the other way around, if the victim is a Muslim, then regardless of what is the cause of the violence, they will hammer it into your head that Junaid died or Akhlaq died or Pehlu died, and they'll keep drilling into your heads that you will remember it. So all of us will remember the name of Pehlu, we'll remember the name of Akhlaq, we'll remember the name of Junaid, we'll remember the name of Parvez, even after months and months that the incident is over. But I ask, how many people know Prashant Pujari? Hardly.
Sure.
How people know? How many of us know the names of Hindu victims? How many of us Hindus also know Ramalingam? Ramalingam was a person who had taken on Islamist people who had come to convert in his village, and he had shot a video, and that shot in Tamil Nadu, and that video had become viral on social media. 2 days after that, he was killed in a very brutal way, and his hands were cut off from the wrist. Do you know what were the headlines in the national media? That a catering contractor was killed. Was he killed because he was a catering contractor? They didn't even take his name. They didn't even say that Ramalingam, a Hindu man, was killed because he dared to took on the Islamic people who had come to convert in his village. See, they just said catering contractor died in some fight, implying that why was he killed? Was he killed because the food that he made was bad? No, he was killed because he was a Hindu. But nobody wants to talk about that. And unfortunately, you ask me, why is it that young people consistently find themselves, seeking the coolness of wokeism.
Yeah.
That is because the whole education system is geared towards that. You get into the school, that is the only thing that has been drummed into your heads. You want to study humanities, your grades, your peer acceptance, your professor's approval, everything depends on whether you want to toe that line or not. If you really talk about being a proud Hindu, then you will be ostracized. You will be ostracized even in your social groups. So that is the time when it's very easy to brainwash. I mean, you go to Instagram and you see the accounts of all these young people who call themselves woke comedians, woke thinkers, or whatever it is. And your head will start reeling. It's like these people, they only whine about so-called abuse. They only whine about seeking mental health, and they talk about stupid. They're not worried about the real issues. They're not worried about work. They're not worried about studies. They're not worried about making something of themselves. They're not worried about real achievements, but they're only worried about their imaginary abuse at the hands of somebody and forever playing victim. That is the generation. Not all Indians are like that. Not all young people are like that. I know of young Indians who are remarkably driven and who are very focused on their studies and who want to do something of their lives. But there is a significant section of the ultra rich or the upper middle class Indian youth which thinks that it is cool to diss everything about your tradition without understanding it. I can still understand somebody reading the Ramayana in the original in Sanskrit, understanding the tradition, and then saying that I don't agree with this thing, this is my critique. That I can understand. But without even reading it, without even understanding the original text, how can you criticize? How can you criticize something that you don't understand? And more importantly, how can you pass off your stupid, dumb opinions as facts? Just because you think something is wrong doesn't make it the fact, you know?
Yeah, the all-time rhetoric of Manusmriti and Gomutra and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that brings me to another question, which you keep writing about, and I love to read about what you write about temples. Now there is a discussion going on in social media, in close quarters, that should governments control temples now, given the state that our heritage temples, most of it is on the verge of, probably going away. We can't even recognize half of the temple is broken. Something the deities are vandalized, and nobody cares. I mean, until it comes to the news or comes as a TRP making news, so news will come. Otherwise, nobody really bothers. Another thing which is happening is because there are in certain states, the governments, the one who are in the government, their ideologies itself are very anti-Hindu, or probably, let's say, they don't believe in the concept of Hindu or anything, like they're atheist, as they call it. And someone who doesn't believe in your God, obviously I don't know how people can expect them to protect their faith. So in that context, do you see that temples should be controlled by the governments, whereas the mosque and the churches are still not controlled by the governments? Why is this selective control of our temples?
See, the answer to this question is very easy. Obviously, Hindus need to control their own temples. Hindu temples belong to Hindus. They do not belong to ASI. They do not belong to the government. They do not belong to a family. They do not belong to anybody but to the future generation of Hindus. So it is not rocket science to say that the government should be out of managing the Hindu temples and the local community should take charge of it wherever possible. And I've seen it work. I come from Goa, where all the temples are community controlled. The government has no say in how the temple is controlled. The government has no say in the maintenance of temples. The government has no say in how the temple funds are to be used. There are regular elections where the community members are elected to the temple committee, and that's how the committee operates. That's how the temple operates. And today, if you go and see everywhere, you will see that the temples in Goa are the best maintained. Temples in Goa are the cleanest. Temples in Goa are places where nobody runs behind you to say that you do this puja or that puja. It is a beautiful example of what a community can do and how a community can maintain a temple. Now there are maintenance of a temple requires a lot of money. Generally, the excuse given by government control of temples is that, okay, community will want to control only small temples that are financially rich, and the community will not be interested in controlling smaller temples, which are neglected because nobody really goes there, and therefore there is no money in the hundi. And there is logic in it, there is truth in it, because I have seen temples which are in very rundown conditions because people don't go there and people don't put money in the hundi and there is no hundi. But that doesn't mean that the government can take control of the temple, and government can take the money that the ordinary Hindu devotee puts at hundi. It's for the upkeep of the temple, it is for looking after the temple. The government cannot say that we'll use only 20% of that funds for the temple and the other 80% we'll use for other government purposes, or for maintaining
or giving
places of other
salaries to
religions.
imams. Yeah.
Or exactly, or giving salaries to imams. That's ridiculous. It's not your money. It's the money of the average Hindu devotee who has given it to the temple. He's not given it to the government. It's not a tax that
for that we pay tax.
Somebody has paid the government. So it's absolutely wrong. It's wrong for there is no on no yardstick can you say that the government can control Hindu temples, especially when the government has no control over churches or temples. So are you saying that only Hindus are inherently dishonest? Only Hindus don't have the capability to maintain their own temples, but Muslims of India and Christians of India are fine people, honest people who can control their properties? I come from Goa. I know how much church authorities have given away, sold illegally the land belonging to church and have become rich. So this is complete bunkum, but this is a trope that has been perpetrated for many, many years. And I'm glad that now there are people like Sadhguru who are talking about freeing temples from government control. And because of that, I know that he will be attacked from the entire very powerful mullah Marxist missionary lobby, which do not want this to happen. And sadly, most governments, let's face the fact, most governments also don't want it to happen, because this temple money and temple lands are a big source for the government revenue. So that in Tamil Nadu also, Tirunelveli, that decision was fortunately taken back. There was a decision made by the government to build a collectorate or a government building on the temple land. Would they dare to encroach church land? Would they dare to encroach on the mosque land? No. But temple land is free property. Why? Why? Because Hindus are also not very vocal. No, Hindus have also not been saying and demanding that we want the government out of this. So I'm glad that there are opinion leaders like Sadhguru who are actually talking about it. It's a need of the hour, very much.
Okay, another thing that I wanted to ask you or someone like you for a very big time, and it's been like I've been thinking about is this the paradox I'll explain. In the ancient Bharat, I won't call it India, I'll call Bharat, women were always empowered. They were always Shakti. They were given Shastra Siksha. They were given Shastra Siksha. They were, they had the authority to have wealth, to give even do tarpans and all of that, which is peddled as that women don't have the right. And things like sati did not exist. Menstruation periods were celebrated. They had the right to choose their husband, or not to choose to get married to a particular person and voice their opinion right in front of everybody. And but then somewhere come fast forward to today's situation where you see rampant domestic violence happening. The right to choose husband is completely a far-fetched thought for women living in tier 2, tier 3, or probably in villages. They are forced marriage. There is also Bal Vivah, that still happens in some pockets of India. Sati came in between. Of course, we don't practice now. My entire question is that we had such a glorious past, and everything is is probably demonstrated, just not written, it's also demonstrated through who we worship. We worship Durga, we worship Kali, we worship Saraswati, we worship Lakshmi. And then there are, in between, there are different forms of Shakti, which is based on a particular, and every you can relate. Like if she's angry, she's Kali. If she's giving you money, she's Lakshmi. If you want education, you go to Saraswati, and if you want it all, you probably go to Durga. So in that context, where did we lose it? Like in between, what happened? Is it only because of the Mughal invasion? And why till today we probably associate ourselves as Hindus, but we don't want to go back to the virtues of the Hindus and what Hinduism actually meant, especially for women.
So you answered your own question when you asked me what happened. What happened was Islamic invasion, very clearly, which destroyed this country's culture, which destroyed this country's thought, which destroyed how we perceived ourselves. So that part of the answer is very, very obvious. See, you very rightly asked, in ancient India, we did not have sati tradition. In fact, in Vedas, one of the earliest mantras for a man's cremation was that a woman would go with the funeral cortege and would go and lie down on the pyre for some time before the pyre was lit. And the mantras say that now you have finished your relationship with the man. You're done with, you have ensured that you have seen him away to the next life. Now come back, return back to the land of the living and live your life accordingly. There is no written evidence for sati. Even in Meenakshi Jain's book, where she has gone into the tradition of sati and how it came about and has gone through a lot of documents to talk about what happened to India and why did this concept of sati came being. Even then she says that it was practiced not all over India, but only in some Kshatriya communities, somewhere in Rajasthan mostly, and to some extent in Maharashtra, which carry the same traditions. And that too probably stems from the fact that when in earlier days, during an Islamic invasion, when Islamic marauders army fought with the Hindu kingdom and they defeated the Hindu kings, they took away the women and children as sexual slaves and sold them off in the markets. That has been documented by Islamic historians themselves. So maybe they did not want such a fate. That is the idea behind Johar as well. That the Rajput women did not want to become a sexual slave and traded from man to man by some Islamic invader. So that is why they started this concept of Johar, which is basically throwing themselves into the fire, while their husbands did Keshariya, which means that they fought till death. They were not going to come back. So therefore, the women were prepared that they were going to jump into the fire. I'm not justifying the tradition. I'm just saying, how did the tradition come into being? If you look at Ramayana, as you very rightly pointed out, when Dashrath passes away, his wives don't do sati. In fact, when Bharat comes back from his mama's place and he meets his mother, he doesn't even know that his father is dead because there is no visible sign of widowhood. At least that's what is there in the original Valmiki Ramayana. So he realizes that his father is dead only when he's told that his father is dead, and this is what has happened. So that clearly sati system didn't exist in Ramayana. You go to the Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, there is one incident of sati, which is Madri, who kills herself on her husband's fire. But she does that out of her own volition because she feels herself is responsible for Pandu's death. Because there was a curse on Pandu that if he has intercourse with his wife, he'll die at that moment. And she gives in a moment of weakness and she feels responsible. And she also tells Kunti that if I were alive, I wouldn't be able to treat my sons and your sons equally. But I know that you are capable of doing that. That's why I am committing sati and I am leaving my children in your custody. She's very clear in her thoughts. And that is the only example of sati. Even after the Mahabharata war, where all the men die in the war, even after that, the Mahabharata talks about the vilap, the crying of the widows. But it does not talk about, mass funeral pyres with the women jumping on the funeral pyre with their husbands. So the two greatest epics of India, both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, do not talk about sati. So that sati was not an accepted part of Hindu social life during that time. But there was a time when it was there, and that is why there was a rule made against it that we all know. But that one of the most powerful tropes that the so-called leftist thinkers do is that they will take whatever is good about our heritage, whatever is good about Sanatana Dharma, and they will make it universal. So Ayurveda, it's universal. Yoga, it's universal. Meditation, it's universal. It's got no connection with Hindu Dharma. They will secularize it. But when it comes to regressive practices which have been added later on, like sati or like caste discrimination, there was varna and caste. There's a vast difference between the two.
Yes.
So the caste discrimination, untouchability, and sati, which have been practiced much later on, they will say, "Oh, that is uniquely Hindu." So these are the defining characters of Hindu Dharma. And the good things about our culture, the good things about our Sanatana Dharma, it like the equal respect to the individual. We are the only culture in the world where the feminine is worshipped in a divine form even today. All polytheistic cultures had it. The Greeks had female goddesses, the Romans had female goddesses, the Mayans had female goddesses, the Aztecs had female goddesses. Every polytheistic tradition which worshipped gods and goddesses had goddesses also. So they worshipped the divine in the feminine form. But we are the only culture that still survives that worships the Devi as Shakti, as power. She is the power herself. She is power personified. And whereas the Abrahamic religions, which basically say that one religion says that a woman was born out of a man's rib, and they talk about equality. The other religion says that a woman's voice is, or a woman's word is worth half that of a man. That is why she should be given property half that of a man. That religion talks about equality, and they consider, or they present themselves as very feminist religions. And the religion that worships the woman as a goddess, a religion that gave the women the right whether to be a Brahmavadini and to teach or learn
Exactly.
Veda,
Exactly.
or to get into Grahastha and become a wife or a vadhu. That religion is demonized as Brahmanical patriarchy
Oppressive.
or whatever, oppression or whatever it is. It's like how typically the term Sati Savitri is used as a pejorative in Hindi movies. Even in Twitter, you wear a sari, somebody will make her even a Sati avatar. Or who wears Sati and Savitri? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
There's a little.
So
there was a little dip.
who wears? Okay. So who wears Sati and Savitri? Both of them were very strong icons of feminine power. Who was Savitri? Savitri was a princess of Madhya Desha who was born with the moon of the sun god, Savitra. That's why she was called Savitri. She was so accomplished, she was so educated, and she was so wise that her father couldn't find her a husband who was good enough for her. So she told him that I take this burden off your hands. I will go traveling. She went on a pilgrimage alone to find herself a good husband. Then she found Satyavan.
Solo travel that time.
Yes, solo travel. Yes, solo travel that time. She found Satyavan, and she found him very educated and wise. Satyavan was also the son of a king, but that king had lost his kingdom in some bet, and he had lost his eyesight also. So he was staying in the jungle with his wife and his only son Satyavan. So Savitri meets Satyavan. Savitri likes him, and she comes back to her father's kingdom, and she tells her father that I found this guy, and he's very accomplished, he's very learned, he's very brave, and I want to marry him. So the father meets the prospective son-in-law, says that yeah, I agree that he's all that. But Sage Narada had told me that he's got a very short lifespan and he's going to 1 year. So I can't let my daughter marry somebody who's going to die in 1 year. So she's adamant. She says, no, I have made my choice. He is the person who is most suited to me. I'm going to marry him. So she takes this decision. She leaves her palace because he is in exile in a jungle. She leaves all the luxury of the palace. She chooses her own decision. Her father agrees to it. She marries Satyavan. Then she goes and lives in the jungle. And the day that Satyavan is supposed to die, she knows because it's told. So 3 or 4 days before that, she undergoes very severe tapas. Her father-in-law tells her, why are you doing this? You are only harming yourself. And she says, no, I have to spiritually make myself more able to be able to defend my husband's life against Yama, who is the god of Dharma. So when Yama comes to take her husband's life, Satyavan's life, and he takes it away, What does she do? She doesn't cry, or she doesn't touch his feet, and she doesn't beg. She follows Yama, and she constantly is arguing with him. Those arguments are, you should read them in original. They're very witty, they're very smart, and they're very logical. So she follows Yama, and she constantly has this conversation with him. And finally, Yama keeps telling her to go back. He says, "You can't come, you can't come. Your lifetime is not done. But I have to take, the whole world order will collapse. I cannot give you Satyavan's life." So finally, to get rid of her, he tells her, "You can ask for any boon except Satyavan's life." So the first boon she asks is for her father to have more children, because she's the only daughter and she wants her father to be happy. So Yama says, okay. She still doesn't stop following him. She still keeps arguing with him. Then he says, ask another boon. So then she says that my father-in-law should get back his kingdom. He should get back his eyesight. So she has ensured that her father is happy. She's ensured her father-in-law is happy. And again, Yama asks her, ask for anything, but don't ask for Satyavan's life. So she says, may I be the mother of many sons from Satyavan, which is indirectly asking, and very wittily asking for Satyavan's life to be back. So Yam knows that, and then he grants her that boon, and that's how she brings back Satyavan from the dead. So here is a woman who is smart, educated, intelligent, well-traveled, who is brave enough to argue with Yama, and she defeats him on her intellect. She doesn't sit around begging him and saying that, please give me my husband's life back. So very, very strong person. She's the typical feminist icon. If today Savitri existed, she would be given an award for being the best feminist icon. And this is the woman whose her name is used very pejoratively by the so-called leftist liberal to tell you that, oh, you are old-fashioned, so you are Savitri. Now let's talk about Sati. Who was Sati? Sati was Daksha Prajapati's daughter. Daksha Prajapati was a very well-known, renowned king. She wants to marry Shiva. So her father says that you are a princess. How can you marry this man who lives in a shamshan? Sati's father tells her that don't get married to Shiva. How can you get married to Shiva? You are a princess. How can you get married to somebody who lives in shamshans, who doesn't have any property, who is an itinerant yogi? So she says, nothing doing. I want to get married to him. She gets married to him. She goes to live with Shiv. And then she realizes that her father is doing this massive yagya, which is a major social occasion on those days. So she tells her husband that I want to go. So her husband tells her, Shiva tells her, don't go. Lord Shiva tells her, don't go, because your father won't like it. There's a reason why he hasn't invited us. He doesn't want us to be a part of it. And he invites his other daughters also. So he's invited his other daughters and their husbands, but just not Sati and Shiva. But she says, no, it's my father. I have to go. And she goes, which is what any daughter would say, actually. So she goes to the yagya place, and she realizes that her father doesn't really care and has insulted her. And that also she doesn't mind. But when he says bad words against her husband, that's when she feels really slighted and really angry. And she uses her yogagni, uses her spiritual power inside her to burn herself down. So here is a woman who is very strong, who is very sure of herself, who is capable of taking decisions in her life. And after that, we know the story. After that, we know that Shiva gets really angry, and then he comes and he creates Veerabhadra, and he destroys the entire yagya thing. And then finally, he takes Sati's dead body and he does the fearsome Tandav. And then Sri Vishnu, when all the gods approach Sri Vishnu to save the world, then he sends his Sudarshan Chakra, and Sati's body is broken into several parts, and they fall in different places in India. And those places we worship as Shaktipeeths. That is the story. But the point is, these two women, Sati and Savitri, are very strong women who have taken their own decisions in life, who are not either their father's slave or their husband's slave. They are the icons of strong womanhood. From even using today's yardsticks. Forget about the yardsticks of that era. And these are the two women's names that are used as pejoratives. And so you wear a big bindi and somebody will say, Kya Sati Savitri ke jaisa avatar bana ke rakha hai? You wear a sari, somebody will say snidely, why are you being such a Sati Savitri? It's ridiculous. So next time, I keep saying that, I wrote about it also the other day, that if somebody calls you a Sati Savitri, accept that with grace, accept that with great pride, and say that, yes, I am a Savitri's daughter. That's what I would do.
That's like really, I mean, it's really relevant today. The way we ridicule our past, the way we ridicule our heritage, the way we ridicule everything that was good about it, and just choosing, not we, I'm saying the leftist propaganda that goes on and on and it never stops. Okay, that was like really insightful. Okay, and now at the end of the day, I wanted to know. I mean, I have read about you. If you type Chef Ali, whether there are at least 10 suggestions that come in. So yeah, so that takes me to the next question: is who is Chef Ali Vaidya? The world as we know her, uh, the writer, the blogger, the change maker, the opinion maker, the who doesn't mince her words and calls anyone out, takes anyone head on, and people take it to their heart. I see, like, when they read your tweets or when you quote tweet or you reply, I think it hurts them the most, more than more than the pain of not being in power. They get in the pain of being shown the way or being shown the mirror. So who is Shefali Vaidya apart from all that? I really want to know, like, yeah, yes, what's your journey? And
that's a good question, actually. I mean, I think if you ask my husband who is Shefali Vaidya, he'll have a completely different answer. You ask my children who is Shefali Vaidya, they'll have a completely different answer. But at the end of the day, I am a very yes, I am strong. I am a strong Indian Hindu woman, and I'm proud of being Indian, being Hindu, and being a woman. That at the end of the day, that's who I am. All the choices that I have made in life are basically stemming from these three identities: about being Indian, about being woman, and about being Hindu. And I wear all three identities on my sleeve, and I'm not apologetic about even a single one of them. So it's evident in everything that I do. And it's not that, the left side will often, I won't call them liberals because they're not, they'll often try to perpetuate a stereotype that the supposedly Hindu side is extremely misogynistic. They don't let their women out of their house. Their women are always in the kitchen. They are not able to do any cool things. And if you are cool, you cannot be a Hindu, and vice versa. It's exactly the opposite. I have been traveling solo since I was 17. I have been wearing my Hinduness on my sleeve since I was 17. And both of them have only complemented each other. They have not been at loggerheads. I have traveled in more than 25 countries in the world. I have traveled solo. I still travel solo in India. And I wear my heritage very proudly on my sleeve. I wear saris, I wear a bindi, and I'm not apologetic about it. Why should I be apologetic about it? It's a very essential part of who I am. I have 3 teenagers who are very opinionated, who argue with me all the time. I have 2 dogs. I am a homemaker because that is what I chose. I had triplets. So anyways, I couldn't go back to work. And my husband was in consulting at that point of time. So he had a very demanding career. So one person needed to be at home. But when my kids were about 10 years old, I had a choice whether to get back into regular work life or not. But I chose that not to get into it because I felt that what I was doing was more impactful than it would have been if I had taken up a regular 9 to 5 job in any media company or whatever. I have a mass communications background, and fortunately, I have a very supportive family. That really, really matters. But the point is, all my choices in life have been my choices. And even though I have been raised in a very Hindu household, I have never had to face misogyny. In fact, I have been told that I have this freedoms. I mean, I've been told that, and I've realized it through my writing and my research, that I have these freedoms only because I was born into a Hindu family, basically. A Hindu family that really treated women as Shakti, that really treated women as equals. That is why I have the freedom to do the things that I want to do, to say the things that I want to do. And I'm not apologetic about it. Why should I? I am Shakti personified. You are Shakti personified. Every Hindu woman is Shakti personified. When we feel apologetic about it, it means that you haven't understood the inner Shakti in you. And the day you do that, you will be able to let go of all these artificial bonds by yourself. Baki, you ask me, I have many interests. I write a lot about textiles. I write a lot about temples. I write a regular column on temple architecture. I write on organic gardening. So I have interest in many fields, but those are parts of my personality. But again, everything stems from my 3 identities as an Indian, as a Hindu, and as a woman.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. That's too many things, too many hats to wear and actually manage it fabulously. So that would be it. Okay, any last piece of word, like any last advice that you would like to give it to the generation Z, the millennia, one who's probably drifted away from the heritage, but uh, maybe is finding a way back, wants to come back, but probably not got it yet.
I would give the same advice that I give to my children, that before you reject something, try to understand it fully first. If you want to reject your scriptures, read them first, understand them, find a guru, get guidance, and then say, after understanding that this is the part that I like, this is the part that I don't like, this is the part that I don't like, for these reasons, I'll listen to you. But do not reject something simply because the world says you should reject it, and because you want to appear cool to your peers. That is not very strong, and that is not very mature. That is being a very weak person who is easily swayed with trends. If you want to reject tradition, sure, a lot of people have. Somebody like Adi Shankaracharya also rejected tradition in many ways, but he understood the scriptures and then rejected certain parts of it. First, make yourself that capable so that you are able to understand something before rejecting it. That's what people do in science also, no? If
That's
they
true.
reject or accept a hypothesis, they first understand what the hypothesis is all about. They do experiments on it, they try it out, and then they say that either this works or doesn't work, or this is outdated, or this is a new theory. That is fine. So that is the only true scientific approach towards everything, and that is what Hinduism advocates. That is what Hinduism has always advocated, which is why questioning was never considered, or vad vivad was never considered to be we don't
Yeah.
have a word called blasphemy in our religion. There is nothing that is so sacred that you can't question it, provided, this is a big provided you have the authority, provided you know the scriptures, provided you know what you're criticizing. Simple criticism by saying that, oh, just because I read it on Instagram or I read it on somebody's social media page is not true wisdom. Understand and then critique.
Oh, that's a very good piece of advice. And I would say that is the need of the hour also, because all the references that you see on Clubhouse and Twitter people give is some quote somebody else who they are even not sure of whether they are the right source of information, or probably I read it somewhere. It is said, I read this translate, Google translated it for me, things like that. So thank you so much for speaking to us and speaking in a manner that needs to be spoken, not mincing your words. I mean, very few people in India would do that. I really salute your fearlessness that you are. You are, if at all, someone has to equate. I think you are a combination of Durga and Saraswati both, and I can't
My
have
God,
more respect
that's
for it. But we are like you just said.
that's a very
You
high
said
compliment.
you just said we are all Shakti. So I just combined two Shaktis together, and I think we see that often. Please keep doing what you're doing. Never ever change. We are right. Thank you so much for coming on my show, talking to me, and saying, all these pearls of wisdom I'll collect and I'll go back to my audience, and I hope they listen to it, they pay attention to it, and like you said, read it, and if you don't agree, debate it, but don't reject it outrightly. So thank you so much, Shefali. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sujata, for calling me. And this was a pleasure. Really, I enjoyed interacting with you.